February 20th, 1945. The volcanic grit under Lieutenant Yamada's boots crunches like shattered glass as he presses his face to the narrow observation slit of pillbox 247. Dawn throws long shadows over Iwo Jima's northern sector, and a dark plume marks something moving through the sulfur-scarred plain. At first it looks like another American Sherman, olive drab, familiar outline, one of the same machines that have been bogging down in the ash for 2 days. Yet there is an odd hush about it. Yamada raises his field glasses to study the vehicle coming toward them. Tank 431 advances with cautious deliberation through ash drifts that swallow a man to his knees. Inside the concrete stronghold he helped erect over the past year, the lieutenant allows a sliver of pride. This bunker will take direct hits from 16-inch naval guns. Its 4-foot-thick walls are reinforced with steel rods scavenged from deserted building sites. Machine gun embrasures provide overlapping arcs of fire with neighboring beneath his boots, tunnels run into an 11-mile underground network. 7 stories deep, a subterranean city meant to exact horrific cost from any attacker. General Karabashi's plan is working flawlessly. Let them land. Bunch them on the beaches. Then make each yard bought with American blood. 1 American dead per yard taken. 10 American casualties for every Japanese defender lost. The arithmetic is cold and relentless. But as Tank 431 closes to about 125 yards, Yamada feels a knot in his gut. The turret is turning toward his sector with mechanical steadiness. Where the familiar 75mm main gun should be, there is something else. A modified tube, a nozzle. The sound reaches him before the sight knot, the thunder of a cannon, or the rattle of machine guns. But a high-pressure hiss, like compressed air bleeding off. Then the vision that will haunt him for 4 decades. A fountain of burning liquid bursts from the American tank, arcing across the Pacific morning like molten fire. The stream reaches astonishingly farsome 150 yards of napalm and flame tracing, a blazing line over the volcanic ground. It slams into the concrete aperture of the neighboring pillbox with deadly accuracy, splashing through the machine gun port and pouring inside like molten rock, flowing to the lowest spaces. The screams are over in seconds. Yamada's field telephone crackles with frantic voices from across the sector. Strange American tanks. Something different. They're burning us out. His hands tremble on the receiver as black smoke belches from positions that were meant to be invulnerable. Inside Tank 431, Staff Sergeant Robert Meese's voice slices through engine roar. Gunner, traverse, right 30 degrees. Next, target, pillbox fire. Who could have imagined that 8 modified Shermans, built in secret by Navy CBS over 20-hour workdays in Hawaiian warehouses, would change warfare forever? Who could have prepared for weapons that turned Japan's greatest defensive asset, its underground fortress, into an oven? 5 months earlier, the tale began in a classified workshop at Schofield Barracks, Hawaii, where welding torches sang through the tropical nights and men labored 20 hours a day. Machinists, mate, first class. A. Riker wipes sweat and grease from his brow as he inspects the CBH-1 flamethrower assembly, taking shape inside the turret of Sherman tank number 431, the very machine that will soon make Lieutenant Yamada's world burn. We're not merely constructing another weapon, Riker tells his partner as sparks rain around them. Electricians, mate, second class Joseph Kyle, wipes metal dust from his face. We're building something that will save Marine lives. Every bunker this device burns out is one fewer position our boys must storm to die taking. The 2 CBS crews have been living beside their welding rigs, sleeping in shifts, driven by reports from Peleliu and Saipan, where Marines perished by the thousands, assaulting fortifications beyond the reach of artillery. The arithmetic is brutal and obvious. Portable flamethrower teams suffer about a 70% casualty rate. Some units lose as many as 92% of their flame operators. Young soldiers lugging 70-pound fuel tanks toward concrete emplacements at distances where Japanese machine gunners can see the whites of their eyes. Colonel George F. paces among the 8 tanks being converted in the warehouse. Each modification demands roughly 1,200 man-hours and 150 specially machined components. At 64, with 44 years in uniform, he knows war's bend to invention as much as valor. His CBH-1 system merges the best ideas drawn from British and American designs and captured German devices into something wholly new. A mechanism that can fling napalm-thickened fuel 150 yards with the pinpoint accuracy of a tank gun. It operates at some 300 pounds per square inch, triple the pressure of earlier systems. Explains to a visiting Marine officer and burns at about 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. Crucially, it integrates with the Sherman's existing fire, traversing 270 degrees and elevating from -10 to +35 degrees. The real breakthrough, however, is psychological. These tanks are indistinguishable from ordinary Shermans until they discharge. No outward markings, no hint of their dreadful purpose. 2 enemy lookouts. They seem routine until the moment their world ignites. 8,000 meters away. General Tadamichi Kuribayashi stands in the command bunker beneath Hill 382, tracing lines on maps annotated with exact defensive geometry. Every avenue of approach is measured. Each kill zone is registered with artillery spotters. His 21,000 men spent 1944 carving an underground realm from volcanic rock. 1,500 fortified positions linked by tunnels, large enough to shelter whole battalions. Do not die until you have killed 10 Americans. His standing order reads, hold position until overrun, then fight with grenades, bayonets, and finally bare hands. The general's calculus is cruelly elegant. 21,000 defenders multiplied by 10. American casualties each equals 210,000 enemy losses, far exceeding the invasion force. The Americans might seize Iwo Jima, but the price would be so staggering they would reconsider plans to invade the Japanese home islands. Japanese intelligence has catalogued every American weapon system. They understand man-carried flamethrowers, perilous to the operator, short-ranged, exposed to concentrated small arms fire. Training drills emphasize anti-flamethrower tactics. Target the twin fuel tanks. Rush the weapon during its minimum range to exploit the operator's vulnerability while reloading. But all planning assumes flamethrowers ride on the notion of armored flamethrowers, tanks that can close under their own armor and deliver precise incendiary strikes at unprecedented distances was not in their calculations. Private Takahashi Toshiharu crouches in a spider hole near the base of Mount Suribachi, with a 20-kilogram bomb strapped to his back. At 31, the engineer from Koki Prefecture volunteered for the ultimate mission: to infiltrate enemy tank positions at night and detonate himself against American armor. He has written a final letter apologizing to his wife and children for not coming home. There is no water, no bullets, no way I can live, he whispers to 7 companions who carry identical charges. We go to death with justice. But Takahashi trained to assault conventional tanks. His manual details Sherman armor thicknesses, weak points in the track system, blind spots where a determined soldier might approach unseen. Nothing in his instruction describes a tank that can spit liquid death out to 150 yards. Machines that turn defensive advantages into slaughterhouses. Staff Sergeant Robert Misa glances at his watch as Tank 431 idles near Iwo Jima's black sand. Around him, the 8 M4A3R3 flamethrower conversions sit among standard Shermans, their lethal secret masked until engagement. His crew driver, Private James Morrison, assistant driver, Private Robert Chen, loader Corporal Anthony Vitt, gunner Corporal Thomas Carlson represents months of specialized training on gear never proven in combat. Surprise is our only edge, Misa tells his men over the intercom. We look like every other Sherman until we fire. After that, every Japanese gun on this island will be aimed at us. Through his periscope, he watches wave after wave of Marines fall as they try to press forward against Japanese positions they cannot see. Conventional methods are failing in catastrophic fashion. Naval gunfire cannot breach bunkers buried beneath 10 feet of volcanic rock, and artillery detonates uselessly against works built to resist battleship shells. The first day's toll is horrific. 2,420 Marines killed or wounded for under 700 yards of ground taken. But what if 8 tanks could rewrite that ledger? At exactly 14:20 hours, on February 20th, 1945, the sound that will be remembered in military annals cleaves Iwo Jima's northern sector. Inside Tank 431, Staff Sergeant Misa's voice cuts through engine rumble with the calm of practiced crews. Gunner, flamethrower, pillbox fire. Corporal Thomas Carlson's finger finds the trigger, and the CBH-1 spouts a noise witnesses later liken to the devil's own blowtorch, a compressed nitrogen system at roughly 300 pounds per square inch. Throws a ribbon of napalm fuel in a perfect arc through the morning air. The burning torrent slams into the pillbox aperture, splashing through the machine gun port and pouring into the interior like liquid rock, hunting every nook and refuge. Lieutenant Yamada, 200 yards away, feels his limbs go numb as he watches. Temperatures inside the neighboring bunker spike past 1,500 F in seconds. Oxygen is consumed so quickly, many soldiers asphyxiate before the flames reach them. Survivors who try to escape by rear exits find that burning fuel has tracked through ventilation shafts, turning their engineered stronghold into a funeral pyre. My God, Private Morrison, the driver, whispers as Keening cuts the morning brief, terrible cries that end almost as soon as they begin. There is no time to ponder. Japanese anti-tank crews have located the source, and a 47mm round slams into Tank 431's frontal plate with the sound of a giant hammer. The vehicle shudders, steel singing against steel, but the shot overangles and flies upward. The Sherman holds traverse right 30 degrees. Misa directs, voice steady amid the chaos, and orders continuous discharge. Carlson opens the nozzle again, maintaining a 15-second pour until black smoke churns from the fortification. Through smoke and sulfur they see defenders spilling from their positions, not in ordered withdrawal but in wild flight, a sight no American had seen in 3 years of Pacific combat. They're running, Chen reports from the bow, machine gun, disbelief in his voice. Radio nets light up with reports. Flame tanks operational, Japanese emplacements neutralized. Defenders abandoning fortifications without a direct infantry assault. Tank 4 supporting the 23rd Marines near East Boat Basin. Pioneers, what Sergeant William Patterson dubs, corkscrew and burn, tactics approaching in a spiral to reduce exposure to anti-tank fire while keeping an uninterrupted line of flame. In a single afternoon, his crew destroys 4 fortified positions that had stalled a battalion for 2 days, yet it is Tank 432's, seen near Mount Suribach, that lays bare the weapon's psychological power. Patterson halts his vehicle 100 yards from a maze of caves where dozens of soldiers peer from darkness. Through the periscope he sees eyes glinting like animals caught in headlights. He fires a short jet of flame skyward as a demonstration. Not directly at the enemy, and the effect is immediate and unprecedented. Men begin to pour from rear exits, abandoning posts they were ordered to hold to the death veterans of the Sino-Japanese War, raised on the creed of death before dishonor, now fleeing at the prospect of being burned alive. Marine riflemen placed to exploit that moment are so stunned they hesitate. Initially, failing to fire on the fleeing enemy, within half an hour, an entire defensive sector unravels without a single direct tank. Shell finding its mark. Private Takahashi, huddled in his spider hole with the suicide charge strapped to his back, watches Tank 437 roll toward his sector. His manual told him exactly what to do. Wait until the vehicle is within 10 meters. Then sprint and smash the explosive into its flank. Simple, arithmetic. 1 Japanese life to disable 1 American tank. But as the Sherman closes to 50 meters, the impossible occurs. The turret swings toward a pillbox 80 yards to Takahashi's left, and a torrent of liquid flame pours from where the main gun ought to be. The napalm ribbon arches like a molten river, slamming into the emplacement and seeping through every aperture. The screams that follow are unlike any he's known, not the instant rupture of bullets or shrapnel, but the slow, torturous death of men burning alive inside their own fortification. The enemy was burned out with a flamethrower. He will later scrawl in his journal. The flame was dark with black smoke. I could not see even an inch ahead because the first tank was done. The enemy must have been angry. The second tank came at us firing with cannon and sweeping with a machine gun. Asen, Tank 437 closes to 30 meters. Close enough for Takahashi to watch the commander's periscope sweep back and forth, seeking targets. This is the range, his training guaranteed for a successful self-sacrifice. As he steels himself to leave concealment, the turret pivots a full 180 degrees and unleashes a blast directly behind the vehicle, incinerating a squad of Japanese soldiers who had launched their own charging attack. The tactical revolution is complete. Unlike conventional tanks that can only shoot forward, the CBH-1's full traverse nozzle lets it strike in any direction. What was assumed to be a limited arc of fire now becomes a complete circle of slaughter. Takahashi stays frozen in his hole as the 35-ton tank rumbles over the ash above him. He feels the compaction of volcanic sand and the tremor of its tracks and engine through the mechanical heartbeat of a machine that has just rewritten combat. There are strange things and miracles in the world, he writes. It is a miracle that I am now writing such things at a time like this. It is surprising. By nightfall on February 20th, the figures tell a story that will force a rethink of Marine Corps tactics. 47 fortified positions, destroyed by 8 tanks in a single day. Marine casualties in flame-supported sectors down 40% from the previous day. 600 yards gained in areas that had been static for 2 days. Most importantly, the psychological toll is profound. Large numbers of Japanese soldiers are abandoning positions rather than dying at them for the first time in the nation's military history. General Kuribai, watching from his command chamber under Hill 380, receives reports that shatter his painstaking defensive calculations. Strong points meant to hold for weeks are collapsing in hours. The subterranean fortress intended to be invulnerable has become an inferno as burning fuel snakes through vents and tunnel systems, like molten rivers seeking low ground. His emergency orders that night designate flame tanks as the highest priority targets for every available 47mm anti-tank gun and assemble special assault squads volunteers, who will again strap explosives to their bodies. But the core problem remains unbreakable. The converted Shermans looked like any other tank until they spat flame. By then, it was already too late. At an intelligence post near the beach, Corporal James Martinez, listening to intercepted Japanese radio traffic, copied, frantic, broken transmissions, a new American weapon, impossible to stop, liquid fire flowing like water. Our positions turned into crematoria. The intercepted words only confirmed what Marine commanders were seeing. A defensive doctrine refined over centuries was crumbling beneath a weapon forged by Navy CBS crews laboring 20-hour days in a hidden Hawaiian workshop. Tank 400, its armor pocked with fresh dents and scorch marks from near misses, sat behind a ruined pillbox while Sergeant Mesa took in the altered battlefield. Smoke curled from a dozen sites that had seemed unassailable that morning. and Marine infantry followed in the flame tank's wake, advancing over ground that had exacted hundreds of casualties only hours earlier. We did what we had to do, Mesa would tell his grandson decades later. Those tanks saved a lot of Marine lives. That's what I try to remember. 40 years after that February dawn, two old men stood together on Uma's black volcanic sand, where Tank 431 first opened its nozzle. Former Staff Sergeant Robert Mesa, now 73, and hands shaking, faced former Lieutenant Koshi Yamada, who had watched the first flamethrower attack from his concrete bunker. I hated you for 40 years, Yamada said through an interpreter, his voice barely carried by the Pacific wind. The flame tanks killed my friends in ways I cannot forget, but I understand now. War makes monsters of us all. You did what you had to do, as did we. Mesa answered simply. We were all just boys trying to survive. I'm glad we both lived to stand here today. The two men embraced. Mount Suribachi, rising behind them, the volcanic peak, where Marines raised a flag on the same day Tank 431 introduced a new kind of warfare. Their reconciliation signified more than personal forgiveness. It acknowledged the seismic change 8 modified Shermans had wrought. The figures are staggering. Those 8 flamethrower tanks burned through roughly 360,000 gallons of napalm-thickened fuel over 36 days, destroyed more than 1,000 fortified positions, and are credited with reducing American casualties by an estimated 5,000. They broke the stalemate that might have become a months-long siege, demonstrating that technological breakthroughs could overcome the most fanatic resistance. Yet the human cost lingered. Tank crews reported deep psychological scars from participating in what witnesses described as mass incineration. Corporal Thomas Carlson, the gunner who fired the first burst, later testified that he could hear the screams when the flame hit brief but unmistakable and that sometimes at night the sound still comes back to him. We did what we had to do, he said, but I'll never forget the smell burning flesh mixed with the sulfur of the volcanic rock. The innovation spread beyond Uima. The Marine Corps requested 54 more flamethrower tanks, and Colonel George UNS team at Schofield Barracks, working under top-secret priority comparable to the Manhattan Project, developed the improved CBH-2 model. By June 1945, 70 new flame tanks were ready for Operation Downfall, the planned invasion of Japan. A weapon that began as a last-minute improvisation became standard equipment across the Pacific. During the Battle of Okinawa, Army flame tanks consumed about 200,000 gallons of fuel mixture, proving similarly devastating against cave networks. Machinists Mate Riker and electricians Mate Kyle returned to civilian life after the war, their names preserved mostly in obscure technical reports, yet their work had saved thousands of American lives. General Kurabayashi's final assessment, sent shortly before his death in late March 1945, proved painfully prescient. The Americans had not merely defeated Japan with greater numbers or firepower. They had defeated them with imagination, turning Japan's greatest defensive strength, its underground fortifications, into death traps. Future wars will belong to nations that can imagine new forms of warfare, not those who perfect old ones, he warned, a lesson that still resonates in modern military thought. From precision-guided munitions to cyber conflict, imagination often outpaces entrenched practice. Today, Tank 434, the lone survivor of the original 8 flame tanks, rests in the National Museum of the Marine Corps in Quantico, Virginia. Its scarred hull hints at volcanic grit and shell glancing off armor. A small plaque lists specs and battle history but cannot reproduce the hiss of compressed nitrogen, the sight of liquid fire arcing across Pacific mornings, or the horror of subterranean strongholds turned into furnaces. Visitors, veterans pausing to salute, old men staring in silence linger longest. Schoolchildren ask the difficult question, why would anyone build such a terrible weapon? The answer is not one of glorifying war, but of acknowledging its grim necessities and the courage of young men who operated these machines to save their comrades. The last reunion of UMA veterans took place in 2015 and was attended by only 3 crew members. All in their 90s, they met at the museum and shared memories with historians racing to capture first-hand testimony before it vanished. The age of the warrior ended in flames on a volcanic island in the Pacific. The age of technological warfare had begun. A shift that still echoes whenever industrial capacity and battlefield need combine to turn the once impossible into the inevitable.